Folks, the investigation into the death of 19-year-old Nolan Wells is ongoing, and increasing speculation online is focused on one of the families linked to the July 4th boating trip. Lee Cole, a judge on Mississippi's 16th Chancery Court, the stepmother of Warren Hudson, one of the white teens who accompanied Wells on the trip to Horn Island before he disappeared. Warren was interviewed by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department and cooperated fully. He saw Nolan last at around 3 p.m. on July 4th. They left around 4:30 p.m. when the boat was taking on water and they had an issue with the bilge pump. Nolan made a decision to stay on the island and return inland later with another group of friends. This still, Robert, is a rather strange story. So here she says that they left around 3. Nolan chose to come back with another group of friends. Okay, where are those friends? And also, we've seen the social media video. There were a lot of boats in that area. If y'all have the video, play it, where they recorded Nolan arguing with several white male teens. Didn't have his cell phone when he went missing. His parents, Christine and Elmore Wansley, now have the phone. Okay, Rebecca, for the life of me, I don't know any Gen Z that is not always with their phone. I'm Gen X. My phone's always with me. They are never not on my person. And so it's like, okay, so if he decided to stay back with another group of friends, he wouldn't have his phone? Why would his phone go back with the first group of friends?
I think it's very unusual that a young person, any person, would be separated from their phone, especially if they were that far out, right?
Folks, today in Chicago, the NAACP convention, civil rights attorney Ben Crump joined the family of Nolan Wells, where they laid out their findings of an independent autopsy that was done on the body of the 18-year-old here in Washington, D.C.
As in the case with Nolan Wells, at the time of this report, this forensic pathologist does not know the condition of Nolan Wells. He did not know whether he was conscious or unconscious when he entered the water. He said that would be significant. He said he did not know whether he was forced into the water or unforced into the water. He said that would be significant. So he said the condition of Nolan Wells before he entered the water would be the crux of the matter. It would be of utmost importance to being able to determine a cause and manner of death. He said, definitive circumstances of death are required to determine the manner of death. For these reasons, this pathologist cannot rule out, and let me really call your attention to this. For these reasons, this pathologist cannot rule out if any intervening non-accidental factors contributed to or caused the death of Nolan Wells. Very open. He says, however, dissection of the back of the head during the layered posterior neck dissection revealed a 12 by 8 inch focal area of red discoloration in the deep soft tissues overlaying the occipital bone. And he talked about how he found red discoloration when he cut open into the back of his head towards the occipital bone, and he saw the red discoloration, and we actually saw the pictures of it. It's significant. You can't help but notice, why is this dark red here in the back of his head? And so he was important to note that in his report. He said the etiology of this finding is unclear. There are no lacerations of the overlaying skin nor fractures of the underlying skull. These findings are inconclusive for perimortem injury due to both the extensive decomposition and the absence of associated injuries. This finding, however, is significant enough to be highlighted in this preliminary report for further investigation. It is important to reiterate that the finding could not have been observed in the first autopsy because the posterior head and neck dissection were not performed. He said another limitation, move this back here. Another limitation faced by this forensic pathologist was the absence of the anterior internal neck structures. The trachea and the laryngeal cartilage, the thyroid horn, and the hyoid bone were not received with the body. So he's saying that the throat was not received with the body when he got Nolan Wells' body in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. And so let's discuss that with what he said about that. He said, it is assumed that the initial pathologist retained these structures for additional evaluation. He said the retention of the anterior neck structures during an initial autopsy is a common forensic pathology practice. He was chief medical examiner for 7 years in Washington, D.C., and he said that if they had concern about throat or any fracture or compression of the throat, they too will hold them back. He doesn't know why they held the throat back, but he said the throat was not with the body of Nolan Wells when he received it in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. He said, nevertheless, a posterior neck dissection performed without review of the anterior neck structures is incomplete. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death. He said he would need to have the medical examiner in Mississippi allow him to review the throat. That's why he said his autopsy is undetermined pending investigation. Remember, it's about transparency.
So folks, so it was very interesting looking at some of the comments from people trying to understand what took place as to why they went to Chicago. Let me help some people out. Nolan Wells was killed in killed in Mississippi. The NAACP National Convention is in Chicago. Emmett Till is from Chicago, was killed in Mississippi. So again, if you understand the history of the NAACP, they've long been involved in cases like this. So I don't understand why people, and I am totally befuddled about the sheer stupidity of people on threads and Twitter who are complaining about Ben Crump. Oh, they don't like how he talks. He doesn't win cases. It's like they have no idea what the hell happens in these cases. And we reached out to Dr. Mitchell to join us on the show, but he declined because it's an ongoing investigation. And again, we've been covering this. And Robert, again, it's a lot of conversation. People have a lot of conversation, but it is an ongoing investigation. And so what we are continuing to see is trying to get answers as to what the hell happened.
And I think that's what's most important in this case, these questions. I spoke with the family of Kendra Johnson recently, who had very similar circumstance of a young black man who ends up dead, and mysteriously nobody knows anything about what has happened to anybody. Everyone gets real quiet. You're dealing with small town politics, small town law enforcement, small town judges, etc. And the families often end up never getting justice or never getting a satisfactory answer. And this is what is so significant right now about not having an operational Department of Justice. There's one thing to see what they're doing with the Epstein files, what they're doing with other investigations, but not having an operational division of civil rights in the Justice Department is perhaps the most tragic part of what's going on with this extreme MAGA agenda, because we normally would have a federal backstop where if local jurisdictions were intransigent, if local officials were recalcitrant, you would have the Department of Justice and the FBI that could step in, as you saw with Cheney and Swerner and Grutter in the 1960s. Now this is going to be very much on the family and on outside organizations to donate, to not only determine what happened with this autopsy, but find out what happened in that crucial first 48 hours to determine how exactly did the messages get deleted off his phone. What pictures or videos are still out there on some cloud or some cell phone that might be dispositive? Where exactly this young boy's throat at? And how is that missing from the body? There are more questions are being raised by the day, and the compulsion of local jurisdiction to simply try to sweep these things under the rug. We've seen time and time again that once you start shining light on this, once you start bringing national attention, you get answers. And the fact that we don't have a Department of Justice or our FBI right now that can help us means that we have to depend on ourselves to fight this fight.
Rebecca.
So, I want to shout out Dr. Roger Mitchell. He is the only Black male chief medical examiner in the country. I'm going to say that again. He is the only Black male chief medical examiner in the country. And because of his scientific knowledge and because of his medical training, he has really pushed the envelope for civil rights and for making sure that Black and brown families, especially Black families, receive answers. That is the very reason why Nolan's body came here to DC, because this is where Dr. Roger Mitchell resides. And I think it's important to say that, because this is another reason why we need more Black people going into that particular profession. I've sat on panels with him where he's gone through the criminal legal system, and he's talked about deaths while people were incarcerated. And oftentimes he went into those prisons and he was able to conduct many of those autopsies to show that there's been systemic issues, especially towards Black people, Black men who are incarcerated and who die in custody. But that said, yes, Robert's right. There's so many questions that are left, even the question about the throat. I heard a medical doctor speak on it earlier, saying that sometimes if you're still doing an investigation, then certain body parts might not go to the second or third or to the subsequent medical examiner examining the body. However, Dr. Roger Mitchell did this examination, I think at least 10 days ago, and we've seen that this autopsy has been released. Mississippi has had it longer. So even if they were keeping the throat longer to continue to pursue additional investigation, why haven't that information been made public? Why hasn't that throat then been shipped to DC for Dr. Mitchell to complete his examination of the body? There's too many questions. And we know, and I know there are different, like I'm an attorney. I know there's many attorneys who are reluctant to provide a conclusion on this, and that's responsible. But I will say this, having my family been in this country for centuries and seeing things like this happen over and over, the ancestors are speaking here. And I don't think that it was just a simple accident in the way in which the initial reports, or within an hour, the sheriff's department saying, "Oh, there's no foul play found." How can you say that when the body is still barely cold, when there hasn't been public findings from the original autopsy?
Derek?
Yeah, I'm gonna pick up where Rebecca left off. I mean, it was problematic for me as a father of 7, 4 daughters and 3 sons, to hear a sheriff to say there's no foul play here. How is there no foul play? Because if the roles were reversed, Roland, if there was 3 young black men and 1 white boy, 4 went over and 3 came back. Their cell phones would have been confiscated. They would have been interrogated for hours on end. It would have been a thorough investigation from beginning to end. And so this has been problematic from the time the sheriff said there's no foul play. And I get all the other players, the parents of the other 3 boys, they're very strong and political in nature. But what about Nolan Wells' family? I'm going to keep coming back to that. We continue to watch this 2-tier justice system from 1619 to 2026. How many times do we need to say, Roland, enough is enough? And that's the part that from Kadir Skinner, Eric Gardner, Breonna Taylor, the list continues. These families demand justice. And when you continue to have more questions than answers, we're going to get the response that we currently have.
Indeed, indeed. Plus, we're going to continue to cover this story, giving you the latest. And again, I need people to understand, there's a lot of conversation around this. We don't have much information. We don't have much information. So our objective is to give you real, credible information. So whatever's the latest, what's new, we'll actually have that for you. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281. An update in the Nolan Wells case, folks. The autopsy report in the Nolan Wells case is going to remain under wraps until a grand jury review. That's the decision of the District Attorney Angel Miles McElrath. She released this video laying that out. Let's get this to play. 1 second.
I want to talk directly to the people of Jackson County. Our community is grieving the tremendous loss of Nolan Wells, who is loved and treasured by everyone. Nolan's family deserves answers, and our community deserves answers. Every death in the county, except those of natural causes and non-criminal car wrecks, are presented to your grand jury. Many people don't know that. We have handled death investigations in this manner my entire career. Nolan's case is being handled the same way, with the same care and the same commitment to the truth that we handle all death investigations. I understand the public's urgency to know what happened to Nolan, but we are not taking time for time's sake. We are taking the time required to complete the work this investigation demands. Since Nolan was reported missing, local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies have worked around the clock investigating what happened to him. Every piece of evidence must be examined. Every credible lead must be followed to its conclusion. Every witness interview must be analyzed in context of all other evidence. The pressure for answers does not change what the work requires. Our responsibility to Nolan and our community is to complete this investigation thoroughly, carefully, without compromise, supported by the evidence and worthy of the confidence of the people we serve. I also understand that many people have questions about why more information has not been released publicly. In Mississippi, the rules of professional conduct restrict the information a prosecutor can release during an investigation. Our restraint in communicating facts and evidence is not an effort to keep the truth from the public. It is an effort to protect the integrity of this investigation and the grand jury proceeding. As your district attorney, I have an ethical obligation to avoid public statements that could influence witnesses, prejudice a proceeding, or compromise the fairness of the legal process. My obligation extends to and requires me to use reasonable care to ensure investigating agencies avoid making those statements and releasing information as well. These rules exist to protect the search for the truth, not to prevent it. As divided as the discussion surrounding Nolan's death has become, I know we all want the same thing, to understand what happened to Nolan. With that being our shared goal, we must also share in the goal of protecting the integrity of how the truth is discovered. If we sacrifice the integrity of the process in effort to satisfy today's questions, we risk undermining the confidence in tomorrow's answers. When the public asks, what about this, or have they looked at that, or did they think about this? The answer is yes. Those are the same questions investigators ask. The difference is that we can't publicly discuss the evidence, the interviews, or what those efforts have uncovered while the investigation is underway. Again, our restraint in sharing details of the investigation is not a refusal to share the truth. It is our commitment to protect the process that allows the truth to be known with confidence. There's a lot of information out there, and there is a heck of a lot of misinformation out there. I simply want the community I serve to know that this investigation is being handled with the care, professionalism, and commitment to the truth that every family in Jackson County deserves. As we continue this important work, Nolan's family, his friends, and all who loved him remain in our prayers.
So, Matt, you can't release the autopsy details?
You can, but I will tell you, I'll probably take a different tack than other people on this, having been the number 2 at a DA's office. These are the real conversations that are had. I mean, people have the real conversation about what can we release without affecting the integrity of the investigation. Now, whether she can release it under Mississippi law, I don't practice and live in Mississippi. I don't know what it is there. In Texas, it could be released. We don't have this, at least not that I know of. We didn't have anything where we had to hold an autopsy before it could go in front of a grand jury. So that may be an election on their part. I do think generally from a law enforcement standpoint, it is smarter to keep information in before it goes to a grand jury, before you disseminate it, especially in a case that is a high profile case. I mean, I just think that that's their ethical duty to try to be good stewards of the case that they're building. Whether they have to do that is a different question. Whether they always do that is a different question. I don't know those things, but I do know there's some benefit to being smart with that. But I will say on the opposite side of that, every time I see a statement like this, I think about Bob McCullough in the Michael Brown case.
Yep.
And if you remember in those statements, what they tried to do is they tried to get people's assurance that you could trust the process by using the grand jury as this nebulous thing that exists out in the ether, and you can trust what's going to come from it because we took it to the grand jury. Now, I can't say what I ever did in front of a grand jury as a former prosecutor even, but I will tell you, at least in Texas, the only entity that has a right to go in front of the grand jury, like as a matter of course, is the prosecutor, not the other side. So what is said in a grand jury room? In fact, you might remember with Bob McCullough, they were frustrated. People were frustrated that they weren't actually endorsing a specific charge to the grand jury. They were asking the grand jury to see if they saw something, and then no indictment came for Darren Wilson from that. Now, I will concede, depending on the place that you are, I think sometimes the law is written that a grand jury should recommend a charge. So there's a legal, way to look at that in different regards. But the larger point is, I think sometimes prosecutors in high profile situations use the grand jury as a means of getting heat off themselves. And then if it comes down where there's no indictment, they can say, hey, we gave it to 12 people in the community. They looked at it. This is the mechanism for determining this. no blood on our hands. And I don't know that she's doing that here. I will say, I think this statement was more robust than a lot of times you see from prosecutors, at least explaining part of the law. But I also recognize that she's got her own interest, which is looking like she's handling this correctly and maybe re-election down the end of the, at the end of her term. And that calls into question what's actually going on behind the scenes. But I do think there is a valid time to keep information in, especially in a high profile case like this, especially where, there's going to be two contingents of people on both sides of however it comes down. There's going to be a group of people who are happy about the outcome and a group of people who are very unhappy about the outcome. And I think they want to control as much information going out at this point. So it makes sense to me logically, but I also think that there may be some space where they could totally release the autopsy without running afoul of the law, and maybe they're just choosing not to do that.
Well, Candace, Matt decided to take your thunder. I was going to specifically ask you about that St. Louis case in terms of how they were like, well, we just took it to the grand jury and, they decided. I mean, this is giving me shades of that.
And grand juries are sealed, right? So we don't know what that process is going to be. That will ultimately give us the decision after the grand jury process is complete. I think the other thing is that so far, they've released everything else. We've already had the police come to a conclusion that there was no foul play involved by like day or 2 or 3 after they found the body. We have information and audio and video and statements and people talking and press conferences. And now you want to stop at the autopsy. So we are already in a position where we have talked about this and any other case so much that your idea of an impartial jury and the Sixth Amendment right to a fair and public trial, it's already kind of diminished, right? We know that people are going to go in there and they're going to have to be reversed in terms of their thoughts because everybody has information about this case. And you're supposed to go inside, say, as a potential person as on a jury, as an impartial juror, someone who can clean the slate and go in there. So even we have all this information, give us the autopsy too, because we have so much already. It doesn't matter. We have too much that we've been discussing. Even with what the autopsy has given us so far, this red spot at the back of Nolan's neck, we've been talking about that for days now. Everybody, everywhere, people who could potentially be on the jury and everything. We also know this about what happens in a court of law. Who knows what evidence is even going to make it inside of the trial if it goes to trial. It all goes through a process where really the evidence you have to go through a process and certain evidence makes it and certain evidence doesn't. So we don't even know what's going to be considered. So we might as well see what all of it is, because this is all part of the process in terms of us being taxpayers, keeping the lights on at the courthouse, paying the prosecutor, paying people who are on the jury. It's our right to see everything, and it's our right as the public to have access to everything starting now.
Michael?
Yeah, Roland. This does seem like somewhat of a diversion to take heat off of the district attorney's office, take heat off of the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, because we still, not only are we still waiting on the autopsy, but we're still waiting on the toxicology report from my understanding. Okay. And then if it does go to a grand jury, will there be a suspect? So, I don't know the law there in Mississippi, but I know in other cases, they would at least, like here in the state of Michigan, they would at least release what the finding of the autopsy was. Now, they may not have a big press conference,
right,
but they may say what the cause of death was based upon the autopsy. Okay, so this doesn't give me a good feeling. Okay, this doesn't, and I hope they do their due diligence. Everybody wants that, but when you start talking about the grand jury, and I understand the process, okay, but grand jury is not all it's cracked up to be, because it's just, as Matt said, it's just the prosecutor there presenting the evidence. You don't hear the other side.
Yeah.
So it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Well, bottom line is we know what happened. All right, folks, let me get personal for a second. My mom had questions about her Medicare, so she called Chapter, a Medicare advisory company, and she texted me right after saying it's a great benefit. It was easy. A real person walked her through the whole thing, and now she understands better what's going on. But it's not just her. A woman in Yonkers wrote in saying the process was so simple, the enrollment was easy, and she was so glad she called. Then there's Marilyn, 90 years old, in Florida, living on Social Security. Her premium climbed every single year north of $400 a month for coverage she could barely afford anymore. So what does she do? She called Chapter. They found her the same top-tier coverage for hundreds of dollars less. 90 years old, and finally somebody in her corner. I hear stories like that again and again from our community. The Medicare system was not built to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans. Yet Chapter's advisors are independent and honest, the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. They're focused on one thing, what actually works for you. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you. No games, and people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100 a year. All it takes is 20 minutes. You talk to a real person, and it's completely free help. So call Chapter at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281. That's Chapter. Family of a black teen in Mississippi, they want answers as to why their son is dead, and the group of white friends he went out with on the 4th of July weekend all returned home safely. A park ranger found the body of 18-year-old Nolan Wells on the coast of Horn Island on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi this morning. Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley, confirmed the finding of her son on Facebook, asking that everyone give her and her family time to grieve. Nolan was a recent graduate of Ocean Springs High School and a football player at Southwest Mississippi Community College. He was last seen with 3 of his friends on the island at around 3 p.m. local time on Saturday before he went missing. Authorities have not released details about what led to Nolan's disappearance. The circumstances surrounding his death remain under investigation. Now, what happened was his cell phone was found, but he was missing, and his friends could not articulate as to what happened. When did they last see him? And so, again, lots of questions are being raised here. The family sent out notices over the weekend. They were demanding for folks to assist them with finding their son. And again, no one could say what happened. And they kept asking the questions. Again, his friends, his white friends, they all came back. But Nolan actually died. He was his mother reported him missing late Saturday night. And the friends, of course, went out on a small boat for Independence Day. And he was, again, did not come home. And so, again, the question now begs, what happened? What happened? Did this happen on the boat? Were they on land? What's going on? I want to bring in my panel right now. Dr. Omi Kongo, being a senior professorial lecturer, School of International Service, American University, author of Lies About Black People, How to Combat Racist. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Thelma Anderson, creator of the Public Opinion Court, author, Shut Up and Prosecute, joining us from Dallas. Representative Jolanda Jones, Texas State Representative, lawyer out of Houston. Glad to have all 3 of you here. Lots of questions obviously are being raised here, Jolanda, what happened in this case. And what's strange is he comes up missing. The other teams, okay, what information did they give? If you're going out, you kind of know what someone else is doing, unless they decide to just go off on their own. Mm-hmm. And that's why people are saying, what the hell? What the hell is going on? What took place here?
Well, of course, Roland. I mean, 4 kids left, 3 white, 1 black. The black kid didn't come back with them. They were on a boat to get there. So when they were coming back, they knew he wasn't there. Why would you leave? Why wouldn't you go figure out what happened? And, you know, it just doesn't smell right to me. But, you know, so many black parents try to put their kids in a better situation, or so they think, and they put them with white people. I mean, and I don't want to say, I hate to say it, because we hear this story over and over and over again, and they don't know what happened. Of course they know what happened. So the police need to be interrogating them to find out what's going on and what happened to Nolan. And I pray for his mom. I pray for his family. Who would expect that their son would go away with quote unquote friends and not come back? And when he's found, he's dead. So I suspect that the time that the kids have been back without him, they've been coming up with the same story. I suspect their parents have probably already contacted lawyers and they're trying to CYA, you know what that means, cover their asses. But we hear this story over and over and over again. And Black people think that integration was great. It wasn't. In 2026, we see that a Black kid is not safe when he goes out with his white friends on an island. And I mean, I think Black parents need to pay attention.
Again, we do not. Here's what. Again, this was a photo that was posted, and the family shared photos all over the weekend in terms of looking for him. So we don't know.
So I don't care.
We don't know. 1 second.
We don't know.
One second.
Okay.
1 second.
Okay.
Okay. We do not know what happened. All we do know that at one point he was separated from his cell phone. They went to this island. They went to. Thelma, was a remote island that was only accessible by boat. And so again, over the weekend, I saw a number of social media posts on Saturday, on Sunday, folks calling for national media to pay attention to this story. Again, speculation is one thing. Facts is another thing. And unfortunately for this family, they now have to bury their son after his body was found this morning.
Well, all I'll say is
one second, Jolanda, 1 second. Thelma, and I'm a Congo. Just hold on. Thelma, go ahead.
What we do know is that this friendship with these young boys have been going on for years. We do know for a fact that they have been on the water several times with Nolan, and he's happened to make it back every single time. But this time, what we do know is there's a timeline. The timeline starts around 3 p.m. when there was a allegation that they could not locate him. There was another timeline that said around 4 p.m. they were still trying to actively search for him. But there's another allegation that around 7 p.m., that's when it was notified to the parents after they made it back with his phone. So in the interim, if those allegations are true based on the timeline, what was going on in the interim of those 3 hours? What I can tell you is that they have lost valuable evidence at this point, because what we did see is those young men on that boat drinking underage, which is a crime in the state of Mississippi. What we do know based off of the timeline that now we cannot collect urine samples to see how intoxicated these young men were. We can't collect any statements from them at the time of this happened to actually get a factual, accurate account of what they recall based on where Nolan was and where they last saw him. So now it's going to be upon the parents to get independent everything. They need their own civil rights attorney. They need their own trial advocate. They need their own ME expert, an independent autopsy done, not with the state solely, because it's too many questions that need to be answered. They're going to need a forensic phone specialist in order to determine what was going on with them phones, who made contact, who was talked to after the fact, what was the last contact with Nolan based off of cell phone service. It's going to be a lot, but it's some valuable time that has been lost. But what we can say for a fact is that they've been out on that water before with Nolan, and he's made it back every single time. But
so
this time.
This is Ome Congo. This is from Capital B. They reported Wells was last seen on July 4th on the island, where he was hanging out with a group of friends. The friends returned home, but no one has come forward with any information about what happened to him. Later in their story, they say there's been no official reports or additional information from those who were present about what happened. That right there raises a serious red flag on Mekongo in order to understand, because if you had a friend and you go out, this is very simple. Did he fall overboard? Did y'all search for the body? Did they arrive at the island? Did all of you get off and go on the island? Were y'all together? Did you go separate ways? Did he run into someone there he knew and then he left with them? All those are the kind of questions that those friends are going to have to answer to authorities.
And these are the types of questions they should have immediately told the parents if they were being honest and upfront about what was going on. And I know that, this case is immediately becoming racialized, for obvious reasons. This also makes me think, Roland, we covered it here, 2022 with Shanquella Robinson. I believe she was from North Carolina, who went to Mexico with her friends, and they were all black and, and didn't come back. And then a video appeared of her being beaten and the like. And so we really have to, as been said here, we really have to pay attention to what Thelma was saying about all of the valuable time that was lost, because there's no way in hell I'm leaving with my friends to go somewhere and they all don't come back with me and I'm not saying anything. I'm not talking to parents. I'm not coming home without them. So just the fact that these so-called friends left this person in whatever way, shape, or form, that automatically brings suspicion. And from what we understand, given the fact that the parents have been putting out the word to help find their child, it doesn't seem like these other kids came back saying anything. And that's the other part that leads to suspicion. And all of us who got kids in this area, in this age, whether it's our own kids, nieces, nephews, whatever, kids in the community, cousins, it hurts at a deeper level. It hurts at a deeper level. And given everything that's going on in this country, of course, we're going to expect things, racially. But at the end of the day, parents lost their child under suspicious circumstances, and there are people who know the answers who are not talking right now, and that is unacceptable. And as more information comes out about this, the Black family, the Wells family, I'm also hoping that people are looking at ways to support them, to get them everything that Thelma talked about they may need, particularly as it relates to financial resources to get those things accomplished.
So this is from WLOX.com. The local TV station there. The United Cajun Navy is a rapid response team when it comes to cases like this. And this is a quote from Brian Trasher. He said, there were some people that thought he might have wandered off to the middle of the island, maybe into that lake. We'd sent people up there today, and if he was barefoot, there's no way he made it up there. There's cactuses and a lot of thorny brush. He would not have been comfortable being able to make it to the middle of the island. He probably would have turned around and went to the beach. And this was the story that they reported as it was going on. And the sheriff's department was asking for additional information as well. And again, as I sort of see this story, I do wonder, Jolanda, what type of investigation was happening immediately. Did authorities, did they see the story of these other individuals as being sketchy? Because if you look at that description, you're going to this remote island. To that point, if you're barefoot or whatever, you're not walking around the island. And then, so it's just, obviously there are a lot more questions that people have. And Thelma is right. As for this attorney, they absolutely need a very strong legal advocate right now, demanding those answers to ensure that there is a proper investigation conducted.
30 years, as a 30-year trial lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, Roland, let me be clear. One fact we know is that 4 kids went, 3 kids came back, right? So, yes, of course I want to know, what time did he go missing? What time did they call the police and let the police know that there was a problem? But at the end of the day, like Thelma said, yeah, we need to know those things. But I find it curious that those kids haven't said anything, or if they have, no one has said anything about it. And I would be super surprised if those kids' parents hadn't already lawyered up with them so that they can get their story straight. Nothing about this sounds right. I don't care if they've traveled a whole bunch of times and made it back. This time is really all that matters because Nolan is dead. So, and they are going to need financial resources. Medical, having your own independent autopsy done is important. Having forensic experts is it's important and it's expensive. All of these things are expensive. Having a really good lawyer is really expensive. Having a team, because trust me, the state's going to have a team, and I suspect these 3 kids as parents will have lawyers to protect them. So nothing about this smells right. Nothing about it. If it were me, I would have never come back on that boat without my friend. I would have stayed there. I would have helped look for my friend. I would have called the police. That's what I would have done. So the appearance that they're friends, and there's a nice, pretty picture of the black kid with the 3 white kids. I think it looked like they were fishing. None of that matters because Nolan is dead.
Well, that photo was what was posted, and so that was the last known photo of them being out, and so that's one of the reasons why that photo was gone out. And so again, I really do hope that in terms of when we talk about the legal ramifications, they absolutely need their own advocate. Now, the other issue is here, and I already asked Control, y'all need to verify for me. So one of the stories said that there are a number of GoFundMe campaigns that have been up that were not authorized by the family. So no, do not show that. I want to make sure that what we are showing has been authorized by the family. Okay, all right, got it. All right, so this GoFundMe account, Nolan Wells' mother posted on her Facebook page. This is the official GoFundMe that they have put up, and so this is so again, when these things happen, folks just jump out, on their own. But this you see, in loving memory of Nolan Xavier Wells. This is the 1 second, because I want to pull up. The family is seeking approximately. So do this here. So switch to my iPad. So the family is seeking, as you see right here, $12,000. They're going to need more than that. I can tell you that right now. So far, $2,513, 30 donations has been raised. So if you're interested, what you do is, so just so you know, this is what the page looks like, in loving memory of Nolan Xavier Wells. And so that's what you should be, that just so you know. And it's right here, Alea Dennis is, you see the information right here as well. So just so you know, you have the correct information in terms of if you want to support this family, and you see all the information right here. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281. Folks, the investigation into the death of 19-year-old Nolan Wells is ongoing, and increasing speculation online is focused on one of the families linked to the July 4th boating trip. Ashley Cole, a judge on Mississippi's 16th Chancery Court, and the stepmother of Warren Hudson, one of the white teens who accompanied Wells on the trip to Horn Island before he disappeared, issued a public statement after deactivating her Facebook account in response to the growing rumors about her family. Yeah. This is what she wrote. Our family, along with the community, grieves the loss of Nolan Wells. Our thoughts and prayers are with Nolan's family. Our son, Warren, loved Nolan dearly. Unfortunately, I feel that it is appropriate for our family to dispel some rumors with facts based upon the social media attention that is being diverted away from the Wells family and their loss. Yes, I deactivated my Facebook. Given the very heightened emotional state of social media right now, I fear for the safety of my child and my children. My husband and I have 6 children, and we covet their privacy. We do not believe it is appropriate for our minor children's photographs to be circulated throughout the internet, presenting potential threats to their safety. I graduated high school with Christine Wells Wansley. We are from the same community. I have the utmost respect for her and all of the Wells family. We mourn the loss of Nolan with them. Our prayers have been and will continue to be with them. My husband and I were not at Hone Island at any point on the 4th of July. No one in our family is trying in any way to impede with the investigation by law enforcement or to otherwise hamper the family and law enforcement's quest for answers. Warren was interviewed by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department and cooperated fully. He saw Nolan last at around 3 p.m. on July 4th. They left around 4:30 p.m. when the boat was taking on water and they had an issue with the bilge pump. Nolan made a decision to stay on the island and return inland later with another group of friends. Yes, I am a judge. I also value transparency. I apologize if anyone was offended that I deleted my social media. There were no nefarious motivations in my deleting my social media. Social media has a lot of positives, but a whole lot of negatives. We live in a world of clickbaiting, sad but true. My family is hopeful that this information will help to redirect the attention to the Wells family, their grief, and their need for our community support. Folks, Nolan's family is waiting on the results of an independent autopsy that is actually being performed, according to attorney Ben Crump. This still, Robert, is a rather strange story. So here she says that they left around 3. Nolan chose to come back with another group of friends. Okay, where are those friends? And also, we've seen the social media video. There were a lot of boats in that area. If y'all have the video, play it, where they recorded Nolan arguing with several white male teens.
Yeah, well, I think the issue that many people have, and to the judge's statement on social media that it has both positive and negatives, one of the positive is it makes it very hard for people to bullshit you. In 20, 30 years ago, something happens, you have to take someone's word for it. But in 2026, there's GPS location on nearly every phone. Any Gen Z is recording 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's a live stream. It's not just what people saw or what people said. It is about what is recorded. And I think one of the important things is going to be is police have already, anybody who watches First 48 knows that that initial period of time is what is important. Police should have interviewed every single one of those teens that were there. They should have subpoenaed the cell phones of all individuals involved to make sure they not just that they had all video, but no videos were being deleted. We will probably never know how many different angles of what happened are recorded, and we probably don't have the ability to track those things down at this point in time. But to the judge's statement, she's only making things worse. She's only making things seem as if there's a bigger cover-up going on. I've had the same 5 best friends since freshman year of college. It's been 24 years. We've all been friends. I know where all of them are at any given time. And if one goes missing for any period of time, we will all come together like the Avengers to make sure I'm usually the person missing. But with that, this idea that nobody saw anything, nobody has any concept of what happens, I think is very unsettling to most people. And now there's a social media trend happening called Check on Your Brothers, where black men are literally walking up to black men who are the only black kids or black dudes in their social circle and just checking in with them to make sure they are okay and make sure they know that they are seen, that they're looked out for. And if anything happens, you have a brother around here who can help out. And I think it's important for us to reform this sense of community, this ability to communicate, because we've seen this happen too many times in recent years to the point that we can no longer say it's just a coincidence that so many times there's a group of people and the only black person is one who ends up dead.
Here's why I'm confused, Rebecca. This is a News Nation story. They were looking for him. It says, Wells didn't have his cell phone when he went missing. His parents, Christine and Elmore Wansley, now have the phone. Okay, Rebecca, for the life of me, I don't know any Gen Z that is not always with their phone. I'm Gen X. My phone's always with me. They are never not on my person. And so it's like, okay, so if he decided to stay back with another group of friends, he wouldn't have his phone? Why would his phone go back with the first group of friends?
That judge should have kept her mouth closed, because here's the other thing. In addition to how we know how people are with phones, especially 18-year-olds, especially teenagers, we know that phone is basically glued to their hand. Like they literally do everything in life with their phone. They go to sleep with the phone in their hand. They shower with the phone in their hand. They go to school with the phone in their hand. Unfortunately, they be driving with the phone in their hand. Here's the other thing that we also know. If your child does not come back, and it's now getting dark, guess what's happening? Not only is that parent or those parents, those guardians calling law enforcement, they're also calling the parents and the kids that their child was with. So you mean to tell me, this is what my assumption is, you mean to tell me that a mother is calling around trying to figure out where her son is, but no one calls the police? You mean to tell me that they're telling their parents, presumably maybe this judge's kid or stepson or whoever the kid is in relationship to the judge, what they would say, oh, well, we left him because he said he'll figure out his way back. But, oh, we also have his phone. So you mean to tell me within these households, there wasn't conversations that happened that evening before the police was called by Nolan's mother? Like, none of that even makes sense. And so for her to even put together these words, like actually type these words and then post these words, she's a judge. And I know some of these judges aren't properly vetted, but come on.
All of this is baffling to me, Joy. And again, I'm just going to start with, if a person decides to stay back, they don't let you take their cell phone. A young person is taking pictures, taking videos, all that sort of stuff along those lines. How does the phone get separated from the kid?
I don't know. Listen, I unfortunately disagree with some of my co-panelists here. I don't think there was anything wrong with what this mother said, and she chose to say she was going to get off social media. Hell, I've gotten off social media when things get too hot. So I don't really have an issue with that. We don't know her son's involvement, what to the extent. We don't know anything. What we do know is it's suspicious. We do know that. I agree with you, Roland. I think it's very unusual that a young person, that any person, would be separated from their phone, especially if they were that far out, right? That just feels unusual to us. The investigators are getting a lot of information right now. And what we have got to do is make sure that we are keeping the pressure up, that we want regular updates on this story, that we want to make sure everyone is investigated, including some of the parents who may have been engaged with some of they're adults, but some of their young adult children who may have gone to their parents and talked to them after the fact. We don't know that, right? So I'm sure everybody's cell phones will be, looked at, subpoenas, et cetera. All of that should happen. We should have a record, not just of the, parent social media. The parents weren't there, so that's likely irrelevant. But the children's social media is absolutely relevant. So if they eliminate their social media accounts, I think that's a horse of a different color. I hope that we're all seizing that information, that evidence right now. We need to know everything that happened on that island, proceeding to it, and importantly, after. What did they say about that situation? Did they try to coordinate their stories? All of that is information we need, both from the friends that he went there with, the so-called friends that he was remaining with, the girl that he was with, all of those people. I know they're being investigated now. That's the information that I'm looking for. The the mother who happens to be a judge, I feel is a red herring, and I'm just not going to go down that rabbit hole. I think the main goal is, are we making sure the investigators, the sheriff, are they doing a thorough investigation, and are they being interfered with in any way, shape, or form in that investigation? Is it happening quickly? That's what we want to know. And what do his parents say about their engagement with the cops? Those are the things that I'm looking for.
We certainly will continue to cover this case. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281. As his family awaits the autopsy results, the independent autopsy results, speculation of what happened to the 18-year-old grows. Brian Trasher from the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer organization that assisted in the search for Nolan, told CBS News he was flying a plane over Horn Island when Nolan's body was found. Trasher said that with all the crowds in the water that day, he finds it hard to believe no one would have noticed a distressed swimmer.
Yeah, I was told that there was a boat he thought he was going to get on that was leaving and that he might have been trying to swim to it. The only problem I have with that story is that if the people in the boat knew he was trying to swim to it and they saw him getting carried off with the current, they would have known about it. They would have been able to react to it. Not only that, even if that wasn't the case, if he went into the water at all and became distressed, it was so crowded that day that it seems hard to believe that nobody would have noticed a distressed swimmer in the water. So again, it's a story I was told. There's a lot of reasons why I question it. What I do know is that he went out there with a number of boys that has been his regular friend group since he was young. They were ready to leave at about 3 o'clock. They told him it's time to go. I was told he had started talking to a young lady and he wanted to hang back and keep talking to her, and that he would believe that he could get another ride. Now, some people have been criticizing, saying, "No, you never leave your friend." Well, technically they didn't leave him. He requested to stay behind. And if you know anything about how, these barrier islands are and how they're used recreationally, people go out there on one boat, they might come back on another boat. Like it's almost like a community ferry system, because not everybody has a boat, and you might jump on with another group of friends, whatnot. What we have to find out is, after his friends left, who was Nolan in contact with? Who did he believe he was supposed to get a ride back with? Did that boat give him a ride? Did he get on any boat? How did he end up in the water? Did he wade into the water on his own? Did he get on a boat and fall off? That's what we have to find out. On those particular islands, you're not allowed to camp out or be there after dark. And so the rangers, as it gets to be sunset, they start running around looking for, if there's still any boaters or people out there saying, "Hey guys, it's time to go home." So I would not think that Nolan was just wandering around the island when it got dark. My instinct tells me that he got off the island, either tried to swim off or got off on a boat and somehow ended up in the water. But because of the Rangers' presence, I don't think it's likely that he just spent the night on the island or was there after dark.
Again, we'll wait for the autopsy results. Folks, we continue to seek answers into the mysterious death of Nolan Wells, the 18-year-old African-American who was found dead in Mississippi after he went out boating with a group of white friends on July 4th. Independent autopsy is being done on his body. The Mississippi officials say they continue this investigation. And again, we continue to, ask the critical questions. What happened? What happened to this young man? And how did he end up dead? Joining us right now is Christine and Elmore Wansley, the parents of Nolan Wells, also the attorney, Ben Crump. I'm glad to have all three of you here. Certainly our condolences go out to you, Christine and Elmore, on the loss of your son.
Thank you.
I want to be clear in terms of trying to understand this timeline. What time did Nolan go out with his friends? What time did they go out boating on July 4th?
So that was sometime in the morning. I don't have the exact time. I do still have his information up on the Life 360, but it was earlier in the morning on July the 4th.
So, and so he said, hey, July 4th, we're going out for the day boating. Was this something that he had previously done with his group of friends?
Yes, it was, and there was no issues, and my son came home.
So, did he indicate for you what time they're going to be coming back?
No, like his dad has stated in multiple interviews, it was his last hurrah before reporting back to school. So we were just, going to let him have that time to really just decompress because, football can be a lot on you, especially too, he was a student athlete. So he wasn't just, doing one thing. He was having to manage both.
So the evening arrives. All of a sudden, it's getting darker. You have not heard back from your son. What then happened? What time did you and your husband begin to get concerned when you had not heard from or seen Nolan?
So honestly, we got concerned when we got the phone call. There have been times when Nolan has come in later because he and his friends are, watching movies or again at some type of party. So, that wasn't necessarily uncommon. But when I saw his friend call me, my heart dropped because I knew something was wrong. His friends do not call me like that.
What time was that?
That was
when the
around.
called?
That was, I think, 11:07 is when he called. And he said,
he leaves that morning.
Mm-hmm.
Go
So
ahead.
he left the evening before. So him and his friends, they all stayed the night at one of the other friends' house.
Okay, so July 4th was that Saturday. So they stayed the night with some friends on Friday. So y'all last saw Nolan on Friday, and then he goes out with them on Saturday. Around 11:07 p.m. on Saturday, then you get this phone call. We've heard about them having his cell phone. When did they turn over his cell phone to you and your husband?
So they actually gave the cell phone to my friend. Whenever I got the call that Nolan was missing, I was like, you know what, let me call my friend Tashima because her sons, Jalen and Javon, Nolan actually, those are the guys he actually grew up with, right? Like from playing City League on up. We were very familiar with Jalen and Javon and their mom. Again, they're friends of ours. And so I called her and I was like, hey, have you seen Nolan? Can you ask the boys? Have they talked to him? And she was like, you know what? And the boys, of course, they were like, no. So they're pulling up their location tracker on Snapchat because they all follow each other. And they, were able to help pin. I'm pulling mine up on Life 360. So between the two, we were able to determine where his phone was, which is not where his car was. So the car and the phone were in two separate locations. Elmore and I were trying to, after we got off the phone with Tashima, because she was like, hey, look, don't worry about it. I'll go get it. You know, we went ahead and started calling authorities to see who we needed to file the missing persons report with.
And when you got the phone,
Elmore, I have. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ben. Go ahead.
You asked about the phone. It was important when they got the phone.
Mm-hmm. So it took a while. It took a little bit before the phone was handed over to my friend. And then we did meet up. And of course, you know, we met up soon after. We filed the police report finally. And then she was on her way back towards Ocean Springs. So we met up at the second house to pick the car up, which is where he stayed overnight.
The only thing I was going to point out was...
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
The only thing I was going to point out that is very important, we believe, some of the Snapchat messages seem to have been deleted and some text messages seem to have been deleted, and we believe that could prove very relevant.
Elmore, I've raised 6 nieces, and first got nieces when they were as early as a year and a half, and raised them all the way through. They were even now my twin nieces, and they're 22 years old. I don't know many kids today who they're never without these. And did that cause you suspicion that, and when you think about your son, was his phone always with him? Was he always on his phone? Was he always using his phone?
Yes.
You talked about, Christine, you talked about the life tracker. I would assume, just like my nieces, his hand was attached to the phone.
Yes.
All the time.
His hand was attached to his phone all the time. His hand and his phone was always in my face messing with me. So he wouldn't go nowhere without that phone. He wouldn't give someone else his phone and go off a whole nother way. It just wasn't in his character. We didn't raise him like that. For him to not stay with the people that he came with, we taught him that, like, if you go with someone, you stay with them. You go with them, you leave with them. You don't go off. You don't split from the group chasing a girl. There's girls back where you at. There's girls everywhere. So she's not the only one. You can find another girl. So I constantly drilled in his head to always stay with the group, always just be mindful of your surroundings. And you know,
all of the kids, really.
I constantly had those conversations with him until it's like he got, and I could tell he was getting tired of, Dad, you're nagging, but I kept saying, son, one day you're gonna thank me for me nagging you like this, because you're gonna say, Dad was right. And when that day comes, I want you to pick that same phone up and call me and tell me I'm right. So, I say it's just hard for us to believe that he would choose to stay on the island without any kind of forms of communication.
And see, that's the thing that jumps out at me. Again, knowing how young folks are today, if he says, okay, I'm gonna go with somebody else, they don't leave this. They don't, like, hey, be sure, give me my bag, make sure I have my phone, and being, that's what immediately jumps out, that he's separated from his phone. It takes so long for his parents to be notified. And then when you said it appears as if some items have been deleted, obviously people don't realize text messages cannot be deleted permanently. Have you already communicated with the cell phone company to be able to pull those records?
Yes, we are reaching out to experts to try to not only retrieve the deleted Snapchats, but the deleted messages, because we know on the video rolling that's been circulating all around the internet, we know there was some kind of argument where you hear Nolan saying, "Give me my freaking phone. What are you freaking doing?" And then for him to not come back, but his three friends who were in the boat with him all come back with his phone, and he comes back a couple of days later on the shore dead. It doesn't add up, and it makes it hard for the sheriff to say, well, there's no foul play that we found. Well, that's foul play there. When you're talking about an argument over a phone, and then they take his phone and leave him on an island, it makes you scratch your head and say, this isn't adding up.
Have you, Christine, and first, have y'all had any? Did you have any conversations, any discussions with these? And was it 3 young men who went with your son, or was it more?
I think I'm pretty sure there were probably more present. 3 of them have reached out. And I know, and I've been sitting here kind of trying to go through all the facts and everything, because again, we're still grieving. Like it hasn't even been that long since our son, 4 days since he's been found. But I think maybe two or 3 parents have reached out. And I'm just, I'm in a mindset right now where I'm trying to protect my family. I'm trying to protect my peace, make sure my husband's okay. And it's a lot, because social media is just so nasty with what this pain that we're going through. Like, they think it's a joke, and it's horrible. And I pray that they never have to go through anything like this.
Well said.
Unfortunately, and Ben knows this, I've had to interview far too many of his clients. I always say this is a fraternity or sorority that no one wants to be a member of.
Absolutely.
What is so difficult here, again, is sort of like there's this fog, if you will. When you said that they've reached out. The only explanation given was that, and did it come from his friends that he just decided to stay? That was it? They didn't convey anything else?
Yes, that was it. They said that that he wanted to stay and hang out with this girl named Katie. And also, and this was the initial conversation, me being alerted to him being missing. It was, oh, well, Katie's also missing, but we don't know who she is. Like, that was our first time kind of seeing her, type of thing. So then when I'm going to social media,
wow,
I'm coming from a place with information that was given to me by people that were there.
Ben, and you mentioned the video circulating. There appeared to be a lot of boats in that area, and they were shooting video. In terms of this investigation, are you troubled by the lack of urgency that you're hearing from this sheriff, who's just sort of being somewhat nonchalant about what took place with Nolan Wells 4 days ago, or 6 days ago, if you will?
Yeah, Roland, we're very concerned because from the very beginning, his response was that, well, we don't think it was foul play. Well, how do you know? You haven't even investigated anything. And that video certainly makes you think that there's something that doesn't pass the smell test. And the fact that you have the young lady who said that Nolan said he was going to get back on the boat with the boys, and then the boys said, "No." Nolan told them that he was going to stay with the girl. Which one is it? Somebody must not be telling the truth. And again, we cannot overstate it enough. What 18-year-old teenager says, I'm going to stay behind on the island and don't ask for their cell phone?
Well, especially when you look at the map that shows the distance this island from from where they came from. I do want to ask Christine, her husband, is here. So the photos that we've been showing, were those photos taken on that day, or was it a previous boating trip?
We think on that day.
That was taken on that day, specifically the one with all three of them. Whenever I had made the post asking for information, there was a young girl who reached out to me and she said, "Hey, Miss Christine, I know that in the report it's stating that he had black shorts on, but she was like, he actually had blue shorts." And those are two very different colors. Like, you can't get those two confused. And so what she did is she's like, "I'm going to send you these pictures to show you, so I could use to show everybody, like, this is actually the color of the shorts he was wearing," because she was concerned too
So they had sent those photos to her, or had they posted
No,
those
these
photos
are
on
pictures
social
that
media
she took. No, she took the pictures.
Okay, so she was.
Yeah, she took those herself and she sent them to me.
So she was out there.
Yeah, she was out there.
Got it. Obviously, it has been 4 days since your son's body was found. 7 days since you last saw him. Are you concerned with the pace of this investigation? I would also ask Ben. I mean, do you believe? Initial reports saying that the young men have been questioned. No one obviously has been taken into custody. Any thoughts and concerns about that? The pace of this investigation, that here we are, is 4 days later, and there still are so many unanswered basic questions.
Yeah, I know the family is very concerned. That's why they wanted an independent autopsy done, Roland Martin. And so the body was flown from Mississippi to Washington, D.C., because they want to have a doctor do an exam of his body that had no connections, no influence from the law officials in the state of Mississippi, because it's inescapable that, Roland, had the roles been reversed and you had 3 young black men and a young white man on a boat, and the white man dies or is killed, you will see a completely different investigation, Roland Martin. I mean, especially, and you got his cell phone, and you back on the island, and you leave him on the island. I mean, it's so many things that says you all are not doing a zealous investigation on behalf of the family of Nolan Wells. We want the same kind of investigation that you would have did if the roles were reversed for a young white man for our son too.
Absolutely.
Elmore, it has to be. I listened to you as you talked about your son felt like you were badgering him when all those questions, and the reality is, fathers and mothers desperately want to protect their children, want to provide them with as much cover as possible. And so, as you think about those many conversations, you absolutely believe that you gave your son so much information that you don't believe for a second that he would decide on a whim just to make some crazy decision and just go off with some other people. He had no idea, didn't know who they were at all.
I believe I gave my son, like I said, enough information to not do that. He had too much at stake. He had a plan for his life. He knew what he wanted to do. He knew what he had to do coming up that following Monday, which was get down to business so he can get on with his life and get his future started. So for someone to tell me that Nolan decided to stay on the island to chase a girl, I do not believe you. No one is going to get me to believe that. Not one bit. No, I can't believe that because he wasn't raised like that. I had him super focused on what he wanted to do. He was finally buying into what I was talking about as far as sports and business and really taking it serious and understanding that if he wanted it, he had to put in the work.
Just a couple of questions left. Christine, you talked about how nasty folks are on social media. It has to be extremely painful and difficult for you and your husband to see people who you don't know, who don't know you, who don't know your son, question you allowing him to be around white teens, questioning how you raised your son.
What I would say to that is the amount of love and support that we've received from our local community, people outside of our community, and even his friends, it's a testament to his character. It's a testament to us as parents. And this is the thing, I would never, and my husband the same, we would never tell our child, any of our children, you are not allowed to associate with this person over here because of the color of their skin or because this person over here is purple. Absolutely not. And just the way Nolan's heart was, he was a friend to everybody. Like his heart was that big. So like, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, I know we did everything we could as parents, raised our children as best as we could. We have always told them to be kind, caring, and respectful to others, no matter who they were. And that's the way we were raised. So if anyone has an issue with that, then that seems like that's a you problem, not a us problem.
Ben, final question for you. Have you gotten any indication? First of all, Ben, who's leading this investigation? Is it the sheriff or is it the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation?
I think at this time it's still the sheriff because the sheriff is the one who's making the statements. The sheriff in Jackson County, Mississippi.
Do you want to see the MBI take this over?
I want to see somebody lead the investigation who's going to do so zealously. We are in a ferocious search for the truth. I mean, with every day that goes by, that makes it a little more daunting, a little more challenging. So time is of the essence. I mean, we don't want not one more sleepless night to go by just because they don't have answers. We know they're never going to have peace because, you know, their baby, as they talked about, bought their family so much peace. And so there's a void in their hearts and in their families forever. But let's at least give them the transparency that they deserve. As Christine said, any parent, black, white, brown, or red, you would want answers. If somebody came to you and said, we went out with him, we left him, and now he's dead. No, we got to get answers, Roland Martin. We must get answers.
Christine Elmore Wansley, again, our condolences go out to you. It's absolutely difficult, and as you said, it's even more difficult when you're trying to grieve the loss of your son and you're having to do interviews and, frankly, put the pressure on officials to get answers as to what has taken place. And so I appreciate both of you joining us. I appreciate Ben Crump, you being here as well. And certainly we've been covering this story from day one, as we always do. We're going to continue to cover this story because it needs to be told, and we need answers as to what took place to 18-year-old Nolan Wells. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Roland Martin.
Thanks a lot. Quickly go to my panel here. Candace, when we talk about evidence collection, what is bothersome here is that these boys come back, they call the mother at 11 p.m., they don't get the phone until the next day. Anybody who understands investigations, you are most concerned about the destruction of evidence. In this case here, we're dealing with water. And so now, again, you don't know. Did they change clothes? Now you're talking about, where was there a fight? Scratches on their body. What kind of interviews took place from the authorities? There's so many people. There's so many things here at play that could determine not knowing what actually happened.
Yeah. And you said the key word there, and that is the evidence, because the evidence begins right now. And if there are any lawsuits, that's what this part and this time is for, to collect the evidence and make sure that people are held accountable so that evidence plays out well in court, whether it's a wrongful death suit, a negligence suit, or any other criminal action that comes down the line, which there probably will be. Now, I'm not sure, and this is a question that I wanted to hear from them, and maybe you know this, if any of those young men that were with him did get legal representation. I've heard it. I'm not sure but to search for an attorney and not be as part of the search party is ridiculous. And that is evidence. And that is evidence that it goes against any story that they have. At this point, it seems to me, I think about it this way, Roland, when you want to punish a child that's 18 years old or 8 years old, the first thing that you do is you take away that phone. And we know that there was confirmation from Crump. There was, audible. You could hear audio that was confirmed that was Nolan, that he did say, give me back my freaking phone. Why were they punishing him by keeping that phone away from him? There's something that somebody is hiding. This is what we know. And it all has to do with that phone. The fact that they went home, sat on that phone, that a friend of hers had to go retrieve the phone. Nobody offered that phone up? Are you kidding me? This is all the evidence building that is not going to play well for those kids in court, which is why one of the kids' mothers, that judge whose name escapes me, that's why she started her evidence and seeding of it now. That my child, he's been cooperating with everyone and everything is fine. And maybe I canceled my Facebook account, but don't take it personally. People out there are mean. Everybody is pulling together their evidence, and that's where we are. And it does not look good. And it is because of that phone. It is because of that. That phone is telling the story, and it's going to tell the story in court.
Matt.
Yeah, I want to stay on that same thought. So I have literally proven a murder case off of deleted text messages from a cell phone. The police may not have thought they had probable cause to search the phone, but phones get dumped. So what people don't know is even if you delete messages or delete data on your phone, there are various levels to the phone where things are saved. So like I said, I literally proved a murder case off of deleted text messages. There's a lot of evidence surely in that phone. And there are a couple things I don't understand in this case. The first thing I don't understand is if you have a video that's contemporaneous with their time on the island with Nolan, and they come back with his phone and he's protesting them having his phone, you have a theft. So how you don't issue an arrest warrant immediately for the theft, how you don't decide to dump the phone, how you don't send an exigency search warrant to Snapchat, to social media, to the phone provider. I mean, they do that all the time. When somebody's missing and they have reason to believe there's been foul play, the police routinely do that, and the phone companies and other providers have a means whereby they can get them information in an exigent circumstance. Here, on the 4th of July, this young man goes missing. The family realizes he's missing. It seems to me the police had a number of things they could have done to truly investigate this and preserve that evidence. And, Ben Crump is one of the best in the country, so I suspect his team is going to do this. But the absolute first thing I would do is get a private forensic examiner on that phone. I would do a logical dump, a physical dump, find what is in that phone. And there may certainly be things that were deleted, right? And then even if those things are innocuous, right? Even if they're text messages that don't have anything to do about the conflict, then you have a question of chain of custody. Okay, y'all had this phone for X number of hours before it was provided to his family, and there's something that was deleted that was sent after the time Nolan had the phone, or rather deleted after the time Nolan had the phone. It stands to reason you got tampering with evidence. So maybe, this is something the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation will have to get into, but police officers do these things routinely, and I think what this might be is a situation where they want to take the path of least resistance and assume there's no foul play, despite the fact that they had incontrovertible evidence that this young man was not only in a conflict, but that they had expensive property of his, which they would normally call a theft. So how they didn't go down that road, I don't understand. Hopefully Ben and his team are able to develop some of that, and that evidence has been preserved despite presumably someone trying to delete it or otherwise obscure it.
Well, Michael, what's so bothering for me is for a sheriff to say, we don't believe there was foul play. I'm sorry. An 18-year-old, extremely healthy young man goes on an island with friends, doesn't come back, they come back, he's missing, and I'm sorry, that's called doubt. That's called suspicion. And so you don't just come out and just make that kind of statement. That raises questions as to the thoroughness or the quality of the investigation that this sheriff is going to actually conduct.
Yeah, Roland, I agree. I think it's premature to say there's no foul play suspected. You could just say we haven't been able to conclude that at this point in the investigation. The other, so
or you just simply, or you simply say this, or you just simply say this is under investigation.
This is under investigation.
You don't give a you don't give a definitive statement like we don't believe that was foul play.
Right. So I agree, Roland. I watched the press conference today. I also saw the interview this morning on Good Morning America that Nolan's parents did along with Ben Crump. And I watched the interview on CBS this morning. And I have like 15 questions, but I'm only going to ask 2. So I heard you, Roland, say that someone called the parents at 11 p.m. Was that to say we have Nolan's phone, or what was that call regarding?
Well, the mother answered that. She said that the call she got was that Nolan had not come back with him.
Right. Okay. Now, one of the questions I had is when the father went to go retrieve the phone, the boy or the man or the young man he retrieved the phone from said Nolan was like a brother to
No,
me.
the father.
And
No. The father didn't go retrieve the phone. The mother said a friend of hers was the one who went to go and retrieve the phone.
Okay. I misunderstood it at the press conference today. Okay.
Yeah. Well, again, I didn't see that. Here's the deal. I didn't see the news conference. I'm just simply saying what the mother just said, and I just interviewed her. So in terms of, so I don't know that. But so the bottom line is here. Okay. Clearly, they're not giving answers as to what actually is taking place. It has been 4 days since his body was found. 7 days, 7 days since they last saw him. 6 days since July 4th. And it's clear folks are clamming up. And so I would hope the sheriff is doing a real investigation. And the problem is, if he's not, for every day that you get away from this, the problem that you have is you have a lack of evidence. As we said, evidence could be destroyed, evidence washed away, all that sort of stuff. And that's really what is of great concern.
Yeah, Nolan Wells went on a boat with friends on the 4th of July and out to, I believe it's Horn Island off the Mississippi coast. He was the only Black person in this group. He never made it back to shore with them. Days later, his body was recovered on the island.
His family, supported by attorney Ben Crump, Reverend Al Sharpton, and millions around the country, have been begging for a transparent investigation ever since, because the story just keeps shifting, and because there's still no real answers for why he was left behind on the island, why his phone was never found with him, what happened in those missing hours. Like, we're still looking for all of that.
Yeah, and Nolan case doesn't just exist in isolation, right? In the last year alone, we've seen disturbing numbers of Black and brown people found hanging from trees in public places. From Mississippi to Georgia to New York, each one quickly labeled a suicide, each one leaving families and communities with more questions than peace.
Right. And it's not to say that mental health in the Black community, but the specifics of Black people hanging from trees at this time, white supremacy is on the rise, needs to be really addressed, and the quickness to label it suicide. But, at the same time, thousands of Black children and adults missing every single year with almost no media coverage at all. Even in the Nolan Wells case, traditional media spaces have not been covering it. And, there's this underlying truth that Black life is too often treated as disposable. Black death is often treated as unremarkable.
When we think about cases like Nolan Wells or the recent hanging deaths across the country, or the missing Black children that are happening in places like my hometown, Philadelphia, to places like Chicago, from your reporting, what do you think typically goes wrong first, but both with how law enforcement responds, but also the lack of media coverage in those stories?
I think that it starts with the media. I personally just see that the media has such a big role to play in how the world responds to certain situations, including law enforcement. And so I do believe that a lack of media coverage is what leads even local law enforcement to not take cases seriously. And then that delay leads to families never getting answers for what happened to their loved ones. I did a Substack essay when Nolan Wells was first reported missing about the lack of media coverage to his story, and I spotlighted how this situation, if there's anything to learn from it, proves how much local news really matters, because it is small local newsrooms that make stories like this catch fire so that there can be some sort of fight for justice, for answers. And there's one case that always sticks with me of this young 22-year-old Black woman who disappeared at 8 months pregnant and was never found. This was February 2024. And that sticks with me because I just can't imagine her family and going, from the joy and excitement of welcoming a new life into the family to losing that, as well as the young woman that you were raising. I felt so badly for her father. And so with a case like that, I'm like, how do we never, it's been 2.5 years, how do we never figure out what happened?
Yeah.
So the cases like that are just devastating to me.
Yeah. And I think to your point, it's because there's no closure, but it's also just after so long, you really found nothing. And I think it begs the question of just what are these law enforcement agencies doing, and what resources are they actually lobbying? And sometimes I do wonder if our expectations are skewed because of the true crime television, and we think that investigators are investing more energy across the board. But just for families who are going through this in real time, what does an actual, thorough, trustworthy investigation look like? What should that look like versus what they actually get?
I think what families actually get is what we're seeing happen with Nolan Wells in the age of digital media. is when someone first goes missing. Like, I know last night there was a young Black girl who was reported missing near Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And that is what families have to do immediately, is turn to social media. And what happens is either social media ignores it, or the polar opposite is that it becomes this like frenzy of like misinformation, because everyone is now, there's too many cooks in the kitchen and everyone is trying to play a part. And typically that only happens with stories that the internet deems juicy enough to care about, unfortunately. And so I think what needs to happen is that these investigations need to stay local, and they need to be hyper focused on real information. I just think there has to be a middle ground before we get to social media. I know that it's really important in the early stages, but I think we need to, I don't know what everyone's opinion is about in regard to law enforcement, but I think that if we're going to turn to law enforcement, I think we need to have some sort of trust in those systems. Otherwise, I'm not sure why we turn to them. I think we should start working on an alternative to finding our loved ones when they get lost.
No,
But
absolutely. Because
as
this
someone who
is,
is not an expert in missing persons cases, right? These are
yeah.
stories that I cover and I see, but so many of them have the same end result. So I can't tell you from my own perspective what a good investigation should look like, but I can point out where they go wrong. And it's typically when the family loses control of the story and it becomes a narrative that everyone else is running with.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I feel like the hundreds that we've seen reported online, like in our flag through like social media posts, I can only imagine the ones that don't make it to social media because their families are just not sophisticated enough to post it online, right? Or that their story, to your point, isn't juicy enough for folks to care about it or for it to gain traction. And I think that's one of the most frustrating things about stories like Nolan, because imagine if the family hadn't said anything and they just took the word of his friends as that they left him on an island randomly, which I don't know any friends, my friends wouldn't do that. But the inconsistencies, the disparities that we continue to see in regards to the timeline or the red flags, right, that are coming from these young people's stories or the stories of the attorneys. What have been some of the disparities or the red flags that you've seen in the timeline in your own reporting so far?
I think because there's been so many updates, I say, because they're coming from people and sources that we can't 100% verify.
Yeah.
It's become very muddied. And so I know that last night CBS released a report where they used GPS data that was given to them by a official department in Mississippi that has to do with the waters down there, you know, how boats travel. Forgetting the name of that agency, but they provided them with the GPS data of how that boat moved. And so they confirmed, you know, the boat left Ocean Springs at 9:56 a.m. They arrived at the island at 11:10 a.m. They left the island at 4:31 p.m. That data does verify what the group of, you know, young men are saying about what time they left the island. I'm curious to know how they're going to prove that Nolan was not on that boat. And if they can prove that, I'm still not sure how anyone is accounting for the fact that they're saying they last saw Nolan at 3 p.m. and they left the island at 4:31 p.m. This is not, you know, I'm not sure if anyone has like looked at Google images of you know, Horn Island or watched the videos,
I
but this
have,
isn't
yeah.
like, this isn't Cancun, you know, this isn't like this is a sandbar. It's called an island, but it's a sandbar. It's not huge, right? So you can do that lap. Where was Nolan in the 90 minutes between when you're claiming you last saw him and when you actually left the island? Because 90 minutes is a lot of time. Especially like, I know, you know, people who work in media always joke that like that 30-second break that you get, 30
Yeah.
seconds is a lot of time. So 90 minutes is a lot of time. So where was he?
Yeah, and to your point too, I think that's one of the most frustrating things is why did y'all have his phone? Why did you have his
I will
phone? And
say
now that the mother is
I
saying that there
don't
was
think
things taken away from his phone or stuff like
right.
that.
I don't think it's insane because I've again, and this is something that I need to be 100% sure about. I would say I'm about 90% sure, but I've seen that his best friend Javon also left the island. He was on a different boat, but he also left his phone with Nolan's phone on the other boat. Like I don't think I personally do not think it's crazy that everyone apparently leaves their phone over on the boats. That
Yeah.
you know, when
And
I
I
go to
do.
when I go to the beach, I do hide my phone in like a bag and leave it somewhere so
Yeah.
that the sun doesn't kill it. So like
Yeah.
I'm curious to know when did they notice that they had it?
Yeah.
That is a big question. You know, I had seen some of the snippets from Christine's interview and also some of your coverage, because you've been at a lot of these presses, you've had conversations with the family, and so seeing your quotes that come from it. And she had said on multiple occasions that she did not get the phone back immediately, and then she also, to clarify something that was said earlier, that she had to she had to reach out to ultimately get his things back. That it wasn't like someone, you know, was like, hey, we have his stuff, we haven't been able to get in touch with him, so here it is. Like she had to go chasing after some of his things. Is that, did I misunderstand that, or?
So Christine Wonsley, Nolan's mother, tracks Nolan via Life 360, which is a GPS app. And so when she checked Nolan's Life 360 location, it showed that he was somewhere else. It showed that he was on land, but it showed that he was somewhere else. I'm not certain, like she has not clarified where it said she was. It could be that like it showed him on a random street and she's not sure, you know, what it was saying. But so Nolan's friend Warren was the one who called Christine at 11:07 p.m. that night, according to her, and said, "Have you heard from Nolan? No one has seen him, and he's not with us." And then that friend also is the one who called the Coast Guard, reportedly. Christine then reached out to her friend, whose son, Jalen, is Nolan's best friend. Her son said, I haven't seen Nolan. The last time I saw him was on the island. He's not with me. He said, let me check his Snapchat location because they all share their locations on Snapchat. So then he checked and it said that it was at someone's house. And so when he looked at the location, not only was Nolan, I don't know if anyone is familiar with like the Snapchat map and what it looks like,
Yeah.
but like it shows you on a map and it shows like your avatar. And so what he and his mother said is that when they looked at the map, it was not just Nolan, but it was like a bunch of people were in this one concentrated area. So then they traveled to that house and they knocked on the door, and that is when they learned, like that's when they got the phone. And so I don't think that the friend, from what I'm trying to connect, because I will be honest and say the interviews, no one who has interviewed the family has taken the opportunity to in my opinion clearly, you know, clarify the timeline of events. I
Yeah.
think that it's been bits and pieces here and there, and so it's up to everyone else to try and like string them together. So I don't think that the friend who called Christine was at that house or had no, like I don't think that, I think that was a friend who was at the beach and is separate from the group of people who had Nolan's phone. um that's what I am surmising from the story that I've heard.
Okay. That makes sense.
But I
A
am
lot.
curious to know, and I did reach out to Christine, but unfortunately, what has happened is that because Ben Crump is now, and it appears to be prioritizing national media, it's very hard to get answers now. Whereas in the early days, I was getting confirmation in quotes rather quickly.
Yeah.
I this week like re-downloaded Snapchat and like did an experiment where I was having my friend track me and I was changing the settings and shit. So like Snapchat does not track your location in the background,
It only
unless
tracks when you post, right?
it tracks it if the app is open,
Oh, okay.
or it tracks it in the background. Like even if you like quit the app, it'll track your location in real time if you have that setting saved. And so I'm curious to know what Nolan's location services settings were on his phone. Was it set to always track my phone so that even if Snapchat hadn't been used, then okay, it makes sense that it tracks him wherever it goes? Or is it set to only when when I'm using the app. Because if that's the case, then that means that someone opened the phone at that house.
Right. Okay. And these are all such important questions. And I know that you said earlier, you're not an expert on investigations, but these are the sorts of questions that we do want to believe that law enforcement are asking themselves and converging on and getting to these things. It was just devastating to hear the father saying we would have been out there on the water sooner, but we didn't have access to a boat. And it just being like, why does it fall on individual families to have access to these, hulking things that are very expensive to get the searches going, or, it takes the United, Cajun Navy to get out there. And if you can't get any of that to happen fast enough through social media or law enforcement, then you just don't get access to it. But I appreciate the questions that you're asking. I hope that national media is really taking because I will say something that's been happening on social media is there's a lot of anger at what seems to be, what's perceived to be the white friends and their family members like closing off. And that could be just a perception and social media running with, but there's this perception of like people are not working with the investigation, and so now the family has to get a separate autopsy and they have to do their own things with other.
Yeah, it's like why in your social media accounts, why isn't the response to think of how can I be supportive in the family, getting clarity so that way our community can move forward and like being able to mourn him versus like this investigation.
And is that something that you feel like from your interviews, you're like, oh, that's blown up on social media? Do you feel like there is a closing of ranks?
I think that it is a result of social media. And I was talking to someone this week. I'm going to Mississippi tomorrow. And I am trying to get as close to Nolan Wells' inner circle as I possibly can. But I'm also going to visit Horn Island, and I'm going to visit the dock where the boat, because now we have like the location of where the boat came and went from. And so I want to see what businesses around there have cameras. Does the marina have cameras anywhere nearby? I'm sure that these are questions that the police are already asking, but I want to see it for myself. But the issue is, I was talking to a journalist friend of mine, and I was sort of venting about this case because I told them, social media from the moment that this story hit the internet immediately started finding these people and tagging them. And what I told my audience is outrage is completely warranted in cases like this. It is expected and it is fair for all of us to be angry that a young Black boy is gone and to want answers for that. But like using my platform, I'm not sharing anything that's speculative because I do not want to. No one should be trying to create outrage, and unfortunately, social media incentivizes it. But another thing that I have an issue with is that the way that people immediately accuse these people of wrongdoing and insinuated that they should have that they are suspects, right? And that was before Nolan's body was even recovered. So that was before people even knew for certain that he was dead. It's not surprising that people, especially like white boys with resources and families, who come from money, it's not surprising that they were like, yeah, we're gonna disappear now. And so what makes it hard is that as a journalist, these are people that you would typically be able to reach out to. Like, even if it's not the three friends who are on the boat, like typically as a journalist, you can go onto their profiles and find their friends and and message them and say, hey, you can stay anonymous, but were you there that day? And now no one is talking because everyone is being made out to be a suspect. And so I do think that in some ways, the response from social media has made it harder to get answers.
That's real. No, and that's a really great perspective that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration of like, yeah, imagine if something tragic happened to your son's friend group, like your immediate reaction would be probably to mourn, but also like, damn, I didn't think my child would then be held accountable. And I think this speaks to a larger conversation of, because of the deep rooted history of Black kids going missing, or Black kids or Black people being mistreated in white communities, that our automatic response, right, which is a trauma response at its heart, our PTSD, is to believe of foul play. And the question I would pose is like, well, I would ask ourselves is what's the chicken before the egg, right? Are they shutting down as a response to because they have something to hide, or are they shutting down because they know that the public will have a negative impact or have a negative perspective because of the history of violence for Black kids? What can everyday people do, right? Not just journalists or lawyers. Actually, what can everyday people actually do? And you kind of alluded to that, right? Like not sharing misinformation. Actually, we're waiting for not perpetuating or promoting unverified claims. Like, but what can everyday people do in situations like this? One, to raise awareness, but also to ensure that we are not creating more noise than that actually prevents us from getting clarity in cases like these.
I would say that the first thing you can do if a case like this really, really matters to you is to try and support the family in ways that you can. So, and immediately when someone is reported missing, try and spread that. Really try and think hard. Like last night, I was like, who do I know that's in Tennessee? And I started sending them, that missing persons report that had just come in from Tennessee. But in a case like Nolan Wells, try and support the family via their GoFundMe if you're able to do that, or support organizations that do the work of trying to keep these stories alive and find people who have gone missing or get closure for their families. But I think the most important thing to do, and I feel like this is kind of like it won't come across as like a very this won't feel like a brilliant answer, but I think that people really need to start thinking about the ways that their engagement online is capital and spend it wisely.
Yeah.
Stop rewarding the pages that are just so blatantly using this story for clicks and views. I see accounts that are like real estate agents and food critic reviews and like film reviews or pop culture commentators who are now completely focused on this. If an account has more videos about Nolan Wells than the media has news stories, that should tell you something.
Yeah.
Like you should not have been able to make 10, 12, 15 posts about Nolan Wells. You can't, I can't script 15 videos about Nolan Wells, we don't know enough. And so my number one thing in cases like this, and just in general, I think we just have a media literacy issue, is stop rewarding pages that are doing harm. Block them, actually.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. Okay. So how does folks, go ahead, Bria.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, no, that's so real. And I think just one last thing to leave people on is that Nolan is not content. Like, please, even people who think they're well intentioned, well, I'm just posting things to try and get people to act, but like you're treating him and his family like content, and that's not fair. And allow the family to actually get the answers. Because listen, even if we believe and feel like there is absolutely proof of foul play, we don't want people to disappear off the face of the earth with the only evidence that this family might have access to, right? We want them to be able to be held accountable in the proper channels, and not that social media's witch hunt is clouding and getting in the way of that. Again, even with well intentioned, because he's not content.
I really want people to remember that like Nolan Wells' mom, first of all, is so sweet and like so brave and strong. Her resilience is remarkable. I would not be able to do what she is doing, and his father as well. Remember that Nolan Wells is gone, but his family is here, and they can see what you're saying. And as much as people think that they are helping, by sharing stories that they hear, by trying to say, like, I've heard just the wildest conspiracy theories about what people think happened to Nolan Wells. And when I tell people you should not be sharing this, you really should take this down. And if you're connected to someone who told you this, get them to share it with the police. But this shouldn't be online. And everyone gets so mad at me because they think that I'm trying to like suppress this. And I'm like, guys, Nolan Wells' family, my son is only 4 years younger than Nolan Wells. And I'm like, Nolan Wells' family does not deserve to come online
Yeah.
and have to be inundated with all of these conspiracy theories, and imagine the horrific things that may have or could have happened to their son. Let them get to the truth, but we don't have to further traumatize them along the way while they fight for justice. That is so cruel.
When I was called about what happened to Nolan, and as the days went on, the parents came to our Harlem headquarters of National Action Network and told the story as they knew it at that time. Attorney Ben Crump, who I call the Attorney General of Black America, began looking into this situation. And since then, every day, I have thought about what this means and what it could mean. And a lot of what this could mean, it could be the healing, or it could be the poking of the wound. That's going to be decided by what we do. The senior pastor of this church had the courage of his faith to open the doors of this church and let this family funeralize him, even though he knows that some, I'm sure, in the city would wonder why he would even do that. And the dividing of our children of God is something that we have to get over. One of the things that I'm glad to see is that there are people of all races at this funeral. And there are people of all ages. All whites are not a racist, and all blacks are not angry. Somewhere in the middle, we've got to meet and find what is just and fair. And that is why we want to celebrate Nolan, and at the same time say we want a full and thorough investigation. We don't want nothing sugar-coated either way. But for an 18-year-old young man to no longer be with us, we want answers. Not biased either way, just answers. And I think that for the family, the closure can come if there is justice. We will see where it goes. Some have prejudged. I do not think that it is appropriate for either side of opinions to prevail without a backup and fair investigation. We cannot say it was racist, but we cannot say it was not racist. So let's not judge either way until all the evidence is in. And in that light, let me say this, and I'm going to take a brief text and I'll move on. There are those that are so full of hate that they would send hate messages to the house of these parents. They sent one that Christine shared with Attorney Crump and I, and it accused her and Elmer of just stirring trouble and accused the lawyers, Attorney Crump and I, oh, they just want money. First of all, I don't get any money in any of what we do. Most of the cases that you have seen us do, we help to pay the funerals and all of that, and never ask for a dime back, even if they got settlements. But since Mississippi is so special, I'm not only I'm not only saying we don't want nothing, I want to say right here now, and I'm inspired by who accused us of that I want to put up from National Action Network and me, I want to offer a reward of $50,000 to anybody I want to put a reward up for $50,000 for anybody that could give the information that will lead to an arrest and a conviction in the case of what happened. He was not on that island by himself. Somebody saw something and knows something. So I didn't come to make money, I came to give money. Stand up and tell the truth. Whatever it is, good or bad, we're not going to prejudge it, but we cannot end it until we know all the facts. So all you got to do is reach out to Attorney Crump's office, and National Action Network could do that if it leads to an arrest and conviction. And I guarantee you, you'll have it before the sun goes down. I want to thank Tyler Perry, who has paid for the funeral. We didn't call him. He called me and said, I want to pay for that. I want to thank Byron Allen and others that have contributed, some that don't even want their name called. I was thinking as a scripture in Genesis, the 4th chapter, that passage that starts at the 2nd verse said, and again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought unto the Lord an offering of fruit of the ground. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock, and their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering. But for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, why art thou angry? And why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. May God add a blessing to the reading of his word. The story of what we have faced in America is a question that started in the first book of the Bible with the first siblings. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? Or will we, out of some emotions, some anger, some jealousy, some envy, maybe some bigotry, decide rather than deal with building up the beauty that God put in us, that we will harm our brother and that we will harm our sister, and through some malice try to hide it? But The Bible says that the victim's blood cried from the ground. I hear this morning Nolan's blood crying from the ground. Am I my brother's keeper? Or am I the keeper of some secret, some information that you could give and won't stand up? But the blood's gonna haunt you. Those in law enforcement, your job is to follow the oath, not to follow the preference of what goes down. There are those that want me to condemn people before we know whether they're right or wrong. Now, yes, there's some questions around this, and this is not a rally. This is a praise and worship service, and we'll deal with those questions. But, you know, it's interesting. I exercise every morning. I tore something in my knee about 2 weeks ago. And they told me when they did the x-ray, Reverend, that I had torn my meniscus. And I had to go to get some surgery. And they said when I went to get surgery, they said, well, wait a minute, your doctor has to give us your history so we don't get the wrong thing to deal with your surgery. So the medication you may have and what you have to do to recoup and the exercise you have, we got to base that on your medical history. Well, the reason why what's happened to Nolan under unquestioned, unanswered questions, gone, phone and keys found 2 days later. You don't tell nobody you had the phone or the keys. When you confronted, you first tell another story. Then when they finally get the phone and the keys, there are things erased from the phone. There's just too many unanswered questions. Somebody saying that he told us he was leaving the island. So I don't know an 18-year-old person, black, white, or undecided, that gives somebody their phone. I'm a lot older than 18. I wouldn't trust Crump with my phone. So we just raising the questions. Where is my brother? He went out with y'all. He came back not with the, where is my brother? And because of the background, like they asked me before they give me surgery, they went to my medical history. So the reason why a lot of people in the nation are looking at this Nolan situation is that we've looked at history in Mississippi. Some of us remember what happened in Mississippi. And because of what happened in Mississippi, doesn't mean it's guilty today, but before we can medicate and heal today, we got to look at your history. Because history will decide, can you handle the medication? I look back into history, and I noticed that Emmett Till happened here. All the way to Medgar Evers happened here. Based on the history, we got to be able to dig deep. We can't have people in law enforcement saying there was no foul play before an investigation. We got to look at the history. Now, I know, and I told Christine and Elmer, they're going to say, you had Sharpton come down. And that could be controversial, but don't get me wrong. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in a section called Brownsville. I first had, my parents had a nice home in Queens, nice middle-class home. And Daddy left, and Mom had to move to a tenement in Brownsville. I didn't grow up in Fort Greene like Spike Lee. They were middle class. We was poor. We weren't even poor. We was poor. And we had, Spike don't know nothing about this, but we had roaches. And I remember I went one night and I went in the kitchen. Sister had gone to bed, mother had gone to bed. I looked in the kitchen, and I saw these roaches all over the kitchen. And I'm looking for the Raid. Some of y'all grew up like me, know what Raid is. I'm looking for the Raid to spray the roaches. I ran and woke up my sister. And I said, there's roaches all over the kitchen. She said, leave me. I said, get up, you got to help me. There's roaches all over the kitchen. She kind of stumbled and come down the hall and hit the switch and fixing her eyes. And when she looked, she said, ain't no roaches in here. I said, no, they were right here. She said, you woke me up, I don't see no roaches. She went back to bed. She was angry, didn't want to hear from me. I went back again and looked in the kitchen, roaches everywhere. I went back and grabbed it again. I said, come on, come on. You got to see it. I'm not kidding. She stumbled in. She cut the light on. Roaches was gone. So I'm now in the little hallway trying to figure this out. And I figured it out, that when you cut the light on, when you cut the light on, the roaches run. I did not come to Mississippi to cause no trouble. I come to cut the light on. And if we cut the lights on, you're going to see roaches start running all over. It's time to cut the light on. It's time to get rid of our differences. It's time to let love rule over hate. It's time for a new Mississippi. It's time for a new coming together. It's time for us to stand together no matter who's wrong. God will make a way for his children. That's why God can use this occasion to make blacks and whites in a state with a bad history say in Nolan's name, we're going to come together and we're going to find out the truth here together. We're going to love together. We're going to make his name be the difference between those of the past. We're going to have some justice and some fairness no matter what it is. We're going to cut the light on. We're going to get rid of the roaches. Thank you and God bless.
Justice for Nolan Wells. Justice for Nolan Wells. Justice for Nolan Wells. Justice for Nolan Wells. Now let's say it so his family will know they are not alone. Justice for Nolan Wells. Thank you. I stand before you with a plea for justice. I'm so grateful that Reverend Al Sharpton, America's civil rights leader, did not think it robbery to stand with Christine and Elmo and all of their family, to let them know that despite what some people may say or do that is so insensitive, so disrespectful, so inhumane, while you all are grieving the worst loss that any parent could have, that people from New York, people from Los Angeles, people from Chicago, Detroit, London, Paris, all over the world has been calling Nolan Wells' name. Justice for Nolan Wells. I am so very grateful, Reverend Al, Reverend Toon, that we have a great team of lawyers and investigators, because it's always a team effort. As I heard Elmo often talk about, T.O., Nolan was a great teammate. And everybody who's ever played on a team and who has been successful in their endeavor understands that you're only as good as your teammates are. So I want to just acknowledge Attorney Lisa Park, Attorney Eric Hertz, Attorney Gary Buffkin, Attorney Carlos Moore, Attorney Camila Moore, and all those great paralegals and investigators and activists. All the people who are encouraging people to call and give us information so we can get to the truth of what happened to Nolan Wells. We want to thank you all. It matters. It matters. We're on a ferocious search for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. And so it is very important that you all understand our legal team. And we have these great co-counsels, but Reverend Al, we're all co-counsels. Anybody who's seeking the truth for what happened to Nolan Wells, I want you all to know that you all are our co-counsels. Amen? Y'all all our co-counsels. And on this legal team, we stand for truth, no matter who it implicates or exonerates. We stand for justice, no matter who it convicts or who it acquits. We stand for transparency, because we don't need law enforcement to narrate, because we want transparency, because we can see. We don't need them to tell us what they think. And that's why we need all of you to encourage people who were on Horn Island on July 4th. If you took a picture, if you have a video, if you have Snapchat, if you have anything, we are pleading on behalf of Elmo and especially on behalf of Christine. As she said, any parent would want the answers as to what happened to their child. They went out on the boat came back, and Nolan washed up on the shore 2 days later dead. Wouldn't you want answers? Wouldn't you want transparency? Wouldn't you want the truth? Wouldn't you want justice? I mean, is that so much to ask? I think so much about Reverend Al and all these cases where we champion the cause for justice, whether it was any number of young people. I think about Trayvon Martin. I think about Michael Brown. I think about Breonna Taylor. I think about Botham Jean. I think about Stephon Clark. I think about Sonia Massey. I think about so many of our children that were taken from us in highly questionable circumstances. And all the time when Reverend Al and NAACP and leaders show up to say, hold on, we want answers. We want answers because we love our children just like you love your children. Our tears are just as painful as your tears. Our pain hurts just as much as your pain. So whatever you would do for your children, if they were on that boat on Horn Island on July 4th, we want you to do it for Nolan Wells. Whatever investigation you would give for your children, we want you to do it for Nolan Wells. Whatever searches you would do on people's phones for your children, we want you to do that for Nolan Wells. Do it for Nolan Wells. Because really, if we're thinking like co-counsels, understand that Nolan Wells was the son of Christine and Elmore, but he really was all of our sons. Because if something this tragic could happen to their son, it can happen to your children. So we all have to stand up together and say we're fighting for justice for Nolan Wells because he is our son too. And they want us to be quiet. Reverend Al, Reverend Holmes, they want us, Crump, won't y'all just go ahead and, we already told you it was no foul play. What do you keep making so much noise? Well, until we get answers, until we get to truth, until we get to justice, we're going to stand up and we're going to keep ringing the justice bells for Nolan Wells. We're going to ring the justice bells for Nolan Wells here in Mississippi. We're going to ring the justice bells for Nolan Wells in the United States of America. We're going to ring the justice bells for Nolan Wells all over the world because Nolan life mattered. Nolan's 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 life mattered. Okay. Now, I was gonna. Christine, Elmo, can you all come up with this one last time? Y'all understand, really, we work with so many families. The reason we all got to stand on our feet and say Nolan life mattered, because as Reverend Al said, at some point, the cameras are gonna go away, the crowds are gonna go away, the government investigation gonna go away, and they're gonna feel so alone, as if nobody cared, that nobody felt that Nolan's life mattered. So I want you to stand to your feet and let them know that Nolan life matters. Nolan life matters. Nolan life matters. Nolan's 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 life matters.
Let me say to Christine and Elmo, before we do the prayer of committal and escort the family out, I just got a text, Christine and Elmo, you know that Tyler Perry said he would pay for the funeral. He must be watching because he said, I'm gonna match you and put up $50,000 more. So we putting up $100,000 for anybody that'll come forward. We just want the truth, that's all. We just want the truth. And we want to thank Tyler Perry. He must have been watching. Want to thank Colin Kaepernick, who paid for Colin Kaepernick, a real giant in our community that shouldn't be disrespected by anybody. But I'll leave that for when I get back to Harlem. But thank you, Colin, for what he did for this family.